Good evening. Right on time. Had a little trouble getting it started. It said live streaming wasn't available just yet. And you can see that Lola came in to start services with us. So we can, and Dee's down here too. You can't see him. We'll start with the verse of the Kesa. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata's teaching, freeing all creations. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata's teaching, freeing all creations. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata's teaching, freeing all creations. Gata of Atonement. All evil karma ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. All evil karma never committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. All evil karma ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. Fragrance of this incense invites the awakened mind to be present with us now. The fragrance of this incense fills our room, protects and guards our minds from wrong thinking. The fragrance of this incense unites us with precepts, concentration, and insight. We offer it for all beings. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. I go to the Buddha for guidance. I shall become one with the Buddha. I resolve that I shall each day follow the way of life he laid down for us to walk and awakened his supreme wisdom. I go to the Dharma for guidance. I shall become one with the Dharma. The gates of Dharma are manifold. I vow to enter them all. The goal of wisdom is ever beyond. I shall attain it. I go to the Sangha for guidance. I shall become one with the Sangha. In the spirit of universal fellowship and as a member of the Sangha, I pledge myself to strive for the enlightenment of all beings. The Metta Sutta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upward to the skies and downward to the depths, outward and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, sitting or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into the world of suffering. May I be happy and well. May no harm come to me. May I learn compassion. May all my friends, family, and those I love be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those troubled in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those who have hurt me in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those I have hurt in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all my enemies be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all living beings be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. So tonight, because it's Earth Day, because of the situation that we're in, and the amount of suffering and animosity in the world, not that there isn't always suffering and animosity in the world, but seems to be heightened right now. I was going to do Metta Bhavana, but I think I would rather we cultivate compassion than goodwill tonight. It just seems more appropriate to me based on some of the things I've seen and heard today. So I will guide you through a meditation on compassion. This one is kind of challenging for some people. If you feel yourself getting a little too worked up with this, just forget my instructions for a minute and just take a few breaths. You can even open your eyes if you need to, something like that. The important thing to remember is to, don't try to feel a certain way. Just relax, work with the thoughts that we'll be working with, and maybe you'll be fine. So get into your meditation posture. Take several deep breaths. Let your belly be nice and relaxed so you can breathe in deeply, breathe out completely. your shoulders settle downward, neck extend comfortably, eyes closed or open slightly. And let your breath settle into a comfortable, natural rhythm. So we're going to work with the idea of accepting suffering and returning it with peacefulness, kindness, compassion. So to start with ourself. So think about some of the kinds of difficulties that you're experiencing. And imagine that these are a darkness, a smoke, coldness, whatever you think visually or in a texture or color could represent suffering to you. So one of the traditional ways to do this is to imagine it as black smoke, but that makes some people irritated in the sinuses or chest. So if that bothers you, don't do that. Think of it as a darkness, unpleasantness. And imagine that you can breathe it in with your in-breaths. And bring it down into your heart center. Not the organ in the heart, but the center of your chest, where your intentions are. And so you're accepting your own suffering, your own stress with compassion for yourself. And so breathing that in and accepting that, and then as you exhale, breathe out a warmth or a light. And surround yourself with this warmth or this light, with the thought, may I be free from suffering. This doesn't mean you're going to magically make all your problems go away. It means you're recognizing and accepting your difficulties, and recognizing and accepting the role that compassion can make in transforming them. And so breathe in a difficulty, a stress, and then breathe out for yourself. Surround yourself with its antidote. So maybe you're experiencing fear. Accept that fear into your heart, and then surround yourself with comfort, confidence. Maybe you're experiencing a lot of anger. Accept that anger, and with your compassion, transform it to kindness, friendship, caring. So many of us are fearful now, or confused, anxious, angry, worried, depressed. And just accept the way you feel. And then with compassion for yourself, transform it, release it into peacefulness, confidence, mindfulness, skillful attention. Whatever you need to give yourself that. And then think of a loved one. Parent is traditional, could be your child, spouse, be a teacher who's shown you a lot of kindness, accepted you unconditionally. Someone that you feel cares about you. And acknowledge some of the kinds of stress and difficulties and suffering that they are experiencing now too. And imagine that you can transform it on their behalf by breathing it into your heart. Taking in their darkness, their smoke, their discomfort, and sending them warmth, light, whatever antidote they need. With the thought, may they be free from suffering. Now think of a friend, someone you like. Maybe they've done you some favors or something like that, or you just like being around them, like spending time with them. And do the same thing. You can kind of imagine your compassion expanding out in ever widening circles from yourself to your loved one, and now to include your friend. So again, be aware of the kind of stresses and difficulties they're experiencing. Worries, anxieties, discomforts. And breathe that into your heart, and with your compassion, transform it and send them relief. Breathing in anxiety, sending calmness. Breathing in anger, sending friendship. Taking in stress and difficulty and sending out joy, peacefulness. And now expand this to include an acquaintance. Someone that you feel fairly neutral toward. This can be someone you don't know terribly well or someone you just don't have much of a feeling for. You may not know much about this person, but you know that, like yourself and your loved one and your friend, they want to be happy. You know they experience suffering. You know they don't want suffering, that it's stressful, hurtful. And so transform their stress with your compassion. Imagine them with you, extending your circle of compassion out a little farther. And you may not know what kinds of stresses they're experiencing, but you know that they experience the same things we all do: birth, death, illness, old age, separation from people and situations they love, being in situations they don't like. So all those things just bring into your heart with your compassion. Send them warmth, love. May they be free from suffering. Now call to mind someone that you're having some difficulty or conflict with. So if you haven't worked with this before or very much, don't think of the worst person in the world. Think of someone that maybe has annoyed you or that you're having a fairly mild conflict with. If you've got some practice with this, you can work with whatever who's on your mind, and think of this person and acknowledge their suffering. Be aware that difficult people are often difficult because that's the form their suffering takes. So they're sending you their suffering already. This is just your opportunity to accept that and to respond to it with compassion. So acknowledge their suffering. Imagine you can breathe it in and send them relief with the thought, may they be free from suffering. Again, don't try to feel anything special. If you've been feeling compassionate and that subsides, or if you feel resistance, that's okay, that's natural. Just work with the thought, may they be free from suffering. And finally, let's wish for freedom from suffering for all beings. So whatever beings there are, may they be free from suffering. So if you like, this being Earth Day, you can think about what different kinds of life there is on this planet. And acknowledge the different kinds of stresses, all life experiences. Birth, death, illness, old age, conflicts, difficulties. And just let your heart be a place where that's greeted with compassion and transformed into peace and happiness. Ultimately, that's what this practice is for. It's for the liberation of all beings. The liberation of all beings. May all beings be free from suffering. If you'd like, you can imagine sending that to all beings that walk on the land. May they all be free from suffering. All beings that burrow into the soil. Earthworms and gopher tortoises, and all those things, may they all be free from suffering. beings that swim in the water, from whales to tiny glass shrimp. Whatever sentient beings there are, may they be free from suffering. Beings that live in the air and in the trees, may they be free from suffering. Whatever living beings there may be, may they be free from suffering. To end this meditation, just bring your attention back to your breath, anywhere where it's comfortable to feel your breath. The belly is fine, tip of your nose, or you can keep it at your heart. And be aware that you've got an infinite supply of compassion. The more you use it, the more you have. Just sit with your breath for a moment. The bell will ring twice to end the meditation. Take your time coming out. Okay. So while I was thinking about it, if any of you want to work with that meditation more, so that's one of the compassion is one of the 4 Brahma Viharas, and there are meditations to work with each of those 4. And if you want more on that, if you email me, I'll send you the PDF of my workbook on the Brahma Viharas. Buy it on Amazon if you want to, but if you email me, I will be glad to send you the PDF version of it. And there's also some, I think it might actually be on our website, downloadable. I don't know. Look and see. If it's not there, let me know. I think there's some links to guided to that meditation and the others on our website also. So happy Earth Day. It's the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. I remember the first one. I was not quite in high school yet. But yeah, it was, it was kind of the beginning of what they called then the ecology movement. Anyway, that was 50 years ago. So I started thinking, well, what would be a perfect sort of scriptural application for Earth Day? What would you do from some canonical text that would make sense on Earth Day? And I thought about metta, goodwill. And so I want to, we chanted the Metta Sutra earlier, but I want to just kind of repeat a couple of verses of it. This is actually a different translation, but I like this too. This is Thanissaro Bhikkhu's. Think happy at rest, may all beings be happy at heart. Whatever beings there may be, weak or strong, without exception, long, large, middling, short, subtle, blatant, seen and unseen, near and far, born and seeking birth, may all beings be happy at heart. So, like I said, that comes from the Metta Sutra, which was the Buddha's discourse on the importance of goodwill and kindness. And he was actually teaching a contemplation where we cultivate the capacity to be caring toward all beings without any exception. And so that's why I selected this in honor of Earth Day. In this practice, we're recognizing that our own well-being is interdependent with the well-being of all other life, including those born and seeking birth. In other words, people and other living beings that will inherit whatever world we create. So today's a good opportunity to recognize our interdependence with the world in which we live. It's a chance to really value that, to recognize what a miracle it is that we have this earth to support us. And you know, the Vietnamese master Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh once commented on there's a Christian idea that the kingdom of heaven exists in our own hearts. And Venerable Nhat Hanh said, many people are not able to see that if their minds are calm and peaceful, then the very ground they're walking on is the Pure Land. So if we develop this awareness, then heaven is with us always, and we don't have to go looking for it. Dogen, who founded Soto Zen in Japan, famously said that to study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be actualized by myriad things. When actualized by myriad things, your body and mind, as well as the bodies and minds of others, drop away. So there's different ways you can take that, but think about looking deeply into what it means to be me. And when we do that, we realize that we're not separate and discrete at all, and we're able to stop clinging to this idea of self as an independent entity. But as long as we're clinging to our ego, we can't really know our true self. And that letting go of the self can come about, I think, during the process of simply beholding the beauty of the earth. We had somebody at Stetson, this was a couple of years ago, for a program that we did. They were talking about awe, and there's actually a lab at the University of Central Florida where they study awe as a neurological phenomenon. And the way they do it is they simulate sending astronauts into outer space and having them see Earth, see the sun rising over the Earth from outer space. Because astronauts pretty consistently come back saying things like they've seen God, you know, because they've been able to look down at this planet that we live on. But you don't have to go into outer space or go to a lab to do this. You can really just see the world that you live in. There's a beautiful quote from Krishnamurti about this that I really like. What is it to observe the environment around you? The trees, the stars, the new moon, the solitary Venus, the glory of a sunset. How do you watch such beauty? You cannot truly see it if you are occupied with yourself, with your own problems, with your own ideas, with your own complex thinking. If you have prejudice, or if there's any kind of conclusion you're clinging to. So how do you observe a tree, this marvelous thing called a tree? How do you look at it? Have you seen their leaves fluttering in the wind, the beauty of the light on a leaf? Can you watch a tree or the new moon or a single star in the heavens without the word moon, star, sky? Without the word. Word is not the star, not the moon. Can you put aside the word and simply look? So biologist and naturalist E.O. Wilson noticed our preference for nature, for natural spaces like parks and nature trails and things like that. And this was back in the 80s. He introduced the term biophilia, which he defined as the connections that human beings subconsciously seek with the rest of life. And he thought that that might have served an evolutionary purpose, but it actually also contributes to our happiness. When you pay attention to the natural world, you start seeing connections between things. The way the leaf connects to the twig, and then the branch to the trunk, and the roots to the ground, and so on. And you start to recognize that not much happens without the connections between things. And when you see this interdependency this way, you can begin to understand your own nature better. So I think most of us, if we think of a miracle, we think of something like walking on water, or a great scientific achievement like walking on the moon. But the greatest miracle is our ability to walk on Earth. The great truths, the big words, the miracle of existence is right under our feet, right in front of our eyes, right over our heads. And we can experience this miracle in a number of ways. And one of the best that I know of, the quickest, is to be surrounded by nature and be present to it. So if you go out and just simply observe, you automatically shift your attention from self-focus to outer focus. If you're observing the environment, you're observing the present moment. and you're not caught up in worries about the future or regrets about the past. We're about self-judgment, self-criticism, and all those things that the ego likes to engage in. So even if you just go out in your yard, you can lose yourself in nature. Not by getting lost in the woods, but by letting the sense of I and me and mine drift off into the trees or out over the ocean, just into the sky. Then in the process, we discover our own self in all creation. So hopefully today you spent some time being grateful to the earth. If you haven't, it's not sunset yet, at least not where I am. So make it a point, notice what's around you. Bow in gratitude to some of the things that the earth has provided. Take a few breaths and be grateful for the oxygen. Drink a glass of water. Be aware of all the forms that it takes. Rivers and oceans, clouds in the sky, ice in your tea, the body. Just give yourself this gift, being here now on this earth. And then commit to leaving it better than you found it. So I hope you had a miraculous Earth Day. I left the tablet over on my desk charging, so I'm going to go get it and bring it over here so I can see if you've had any questions or remarks. I'll be right back. I don't see any questions, so maybe there's not any tonight. Just a reminder while we're waiting to see if, oh. Okay, there is a question. These days we live in an age where more and more people seek all kinds of ways to find pleasure. How should I deal with that as a Buddhist practitioner? That's a good question. And first I want to point out that we may have more complex and expensive and technical ways to seek pleasure, but that's a universal thing. It's historical. The Buddha was raised in luxury, and his father gave him every pleasure you could have. He had the best clothes and the best food. He had 3 palaces to live in, and he married him off to the best wife he could find him, and all that kind of stuff, hoping that he would really like the pleasures of the palace and of being a prince and all of that kind of stuff, and that he'd want to stay with that and not go off and, as had been predicted, and become a holy man or something like that. So it didn't work. The Buddha recognized that despite the luxury that he had, despite all the pleasures that he had available to him and everything, that those things were all eventually going to let him down in some way. And so remind yourself of that. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't take pleasure in things. If I have a good meal, right? Be careful what you put in your mind. Be careful what kind of entertainments you consume and stuff. But, I like all kinds of music and enjoy listening to it and things like that. So you don't have to deprive yourself, but just recognize that the mind changes in its relationship toward things that we find pleasurable, and the things that we find pleasurable change. They become worn out. If somebody gives you a great car or whatever, if you save up and buy the Ferrari you've always wanted, it's going to give you a lot of pleasure at first, and then pretty soon it's going to need repair work, or it's going to get a parking lot ding or something like that. And so these things give us a lot of pleasure at first, and then they start to kind of deteriorate on us. So, and not only that, but as I said, the way our minds engage with it, we get bored. Um, we kind of become disenchanted with it. The Buddha said he recognized at one point that being himself subject to birth, subject to death, subject to growing old, and all of that he became enchanted with things that were also subject to birth, death, and growing old. Right? All compounded things are are going to change, and on that level, at some level, become just unsatisfactory. And so he said, so why don't I seek that which is not subject to coming and going, that it's not compounded? So find that, find meaning that transcends that sort of thing. Um, Again, doesn't mean that you can't enjoy what's pleasurable. I love this orchid here. I got it because it reminded me of White Sands and of the nun there who grows the orchid. And I'm amazed that it's 6 weeks old and still blooming. It's just knocking me out. But I know that eventually those blooms are going to fall off. It doesn't prevent me from enjoying it now. So, work with that. Is is Beach Relief here tonight? I just wanted to mention. So I've corresponded a little bit with somebody who's been attending a lot of these, and usually posting. So I don't know who's here unless you post something in the chat. Just so you know. Um, there's no way of looking and seeing who's watching. I can see that there's a certain number of people watching, but I don't know who they are. So if you post something, then I know you're here. And they've been coming pretty consistently. And I thought I would mention them because it's Earth Day, and I think they're in St. Augustine, but they work the beaches of this part of Florida to do organized beach cleanups, which obviously they're not doing now because of the global pandemic and all of that. But just kind of wanted to say something in gratitude to them and to other people who are working to improve the environment that we live in, and to save the planet, because it's important work. So I don't see any more questions. I will go on to the dedication. Buddha nature pervades the whole universe, existing right here now. In offering flowers, candles, and incense, hearing the Dharma, and training the mind, great merit is attained. We dedicate this merit to the great Master Shakyamuni Buddha, the all-pervading and everlasting three treasures, to the 16 guardians and all protectors of the Dharma and their relations throughout space and time, to all ancestors of the Sangha and all beings in the Dharma world. May penetrating light dispel the darkness of ignorance. Let all karma be resolved in the mind flower bloom in eternal spring. May the Dharma body maintain strength and health, and years of life be lengthened for all teachers of this Sangha. May their vows be fully realized, and may they live in perfect peace with Buddha Dharma. We pray for all those suffering from violence and those who grieve for them, for all those living in oppression, for all who are imprisoned who should be free, and for all refugees from violence, hunger, and catastrophes, man-made or natural. We pray for the health and well-being of all those suffering from diseases of body, mind, or spirit, all those working toward the healing of those afflictions. We pray for all those suffering from COVID-19, those working to protect and treat them, and those grieving for those lost to this pandemic. At this time, we have members of our congregations, friends, and loved ones suffering from diseases and grieving for lost loved ones. We pray for them and send loving thoughts their way. May they all be serene through their troubles, and may we realize the enlightened way together. Sabe sata sadahantu avera sukha jivino katam punya phalang mahang sabe bhagi bhavantu te. May all beings always live happily, free from animosity. May all share in the blessings that spring from the good we have done. Thank you all for coming. And if you want to come to the Zoom meeting tomorrow and don't have the link, just email me and let me know.